I'm author of Cultural Emergence, and this work stemmed from my work as a permaculturist, and my book, which came out a decade ago, People and Permaculture, which really was quite a pioneering book at the time to take permaculture beyond land-based permaculture and land-based solutions, and to really acknowledge that it's around people, that people are the limit to us implementing the earth care solutions that we know work. I know that all of you have knowledge of and experience of amazing earth care strategies that would really help restore the planet and to reverse climate change if we were to implement them wide scale. And we also know that they're not being implemented wide scale. And so then the question we ask ourselves as permaculture designers, as regenerative designers, is, well, why are they not being implemented on a large scale? And then that leads us to, it's about people, that it's the reason why they're not being implemented is because of the people's energies, of challenges, relationship challenges, neighborhood challenges, political red tape, international policies. All of these reasons are limiting our implementation of the earth care strategies. And then alongside that, if we go a bit deeper to what is it about people, we actually come to that it's cultural, that it's the cultural context that we're in that that leads our behaviors and leads our thinking and leads our solutions and our problems. And it's those patterns, those cultural norms, the habits, the expectations, the perceptions that lead what we see around us, and how we farm, how we hold meetings, how we what are the priorities we put in place. So that led to cultural emergence, which is a toolkit for transforming ourselves and the world, which it does sound quite a big grand title as well and claim, but I do believe it's true that if we were to use all of this, we would transform the world, and starting with ourselves, which, if we're a development worker, we might be looking at that. So we have some in the toolkit. There are some practices, some things which we need to do regularly, and also some principles. So as development workers, I think this one is really, this principle here is really important. This tending to our own personal culture. So who is it that we're showing up as, and being mindful of the cultural context that we bring with us, and those expectations that we have, and the cultural habits that we need to let go of, so that we can pay more attention to what is in the moment, and to not be putting our Western lens on that. And as Jackie shared in her introduction about Realliance, that that your hope is that you will be starting to actually create a culture in this network of networks that then influences the larger mainstream aid and development work. And so one of the things that Chris and I were speaking about yesterday was the shift from coming in as a development worker with you know, the white folk that have the solutions, and that, you know, the West is the pinnacle of progress and development, and that we know we have the solutions, to a bit more humility in that. And the other principle that came to mind is this one of honoring the wisdom within. So, you know, and we've got here, every system holds wisdom. So to be aware that the systems that we're going into to support have the wisdom within them for change, that the system that we're supporting actually, if given the right conditions, knows how to flourish and how to change in a regenerative direction. And that you following that is that usually why they're not doing it is because of lack of privilege and the constraints that creates. I wanted to really open up space to questions, because I know that that's, you know, that's really fertile when you feed questions, and then we can go into territory which I might not have thought of doing otherwise.
What would you say are some of the key differences between a cultural emergence kind of informed response and a permaculture informed response?
Well, I mean, they're very linked. So I would say that maybe like the classic permaculture response maybe is focusing on the earth care and focusing on maybe the more, if we think about culture as like a plant or an iceberg, where there's above surface things like our architecture and our you know, our toilets we've heard about, and then there's below the surface our values, our thinking patterns, you know, our perceptions, our judgments is below the surface. That permaculture maybe comes in above the surface, so it comes in with very pragmatic solutions. And then cultural emergence, I would say, goes below the surface to really explore, well, why are some things adopted quite easily, and why are some things not adopted very easily? What are the values and the phobias and the taboos that might be influencing or limiting the uptake of some of those solutions? So to really be thinking about the culture beneath it, and what are those patterns that can either support or prevent the strategies, the earth care strategies being put in place. So yeah, that would be where I would say that we're sort of, and then with the cultural emergence toolkit, it's about then creating the patterns that look below the surface, that give us this awareness of culture, that also give us you know, a design framework that helps us to look at those patterns, to look at those limits, to look at the skills that is in the system that can support as well. Thank you, Bruce. So Bruce has just said, I can't agree more with Looby. Integrating and appreciating contribution of culture is key to success of permaculture and regenerative projects. It makes us, the project implementers, understand the people we work with, and they also feel appreciated. Absolutely appreciated and understood. And then from that understanding and appreciation, then we can find solutions that that support them in the direction they want to go in, rather than imposing a solution on people.
I sense a lot of work in disaster and displacement comes with a lot of healing and trauma healing within it, because there's a lot of trauma that comes with being displaced sometimes and usually, and facing disasters and conflict. What offering do you think the Cultural Emergence Toolkit could have for healing within communities and allowing people to come back to their cultural wisdom in those times of fracture?
And I know that when there's displacement or there's a disaster, that it's like we're in a time of cultural emergence, and it's it's a time when the habits and the values and all the norms and expectations, all of those things get kind of thrown up in the air, and it's a time when then you're sort of working out what comes next and how to make that a fertile cultural emergence, constructive, possibilities and opportunities. And I was wondering, maybe with all the wisdom here, people could share in the chat, what are the sort of the opportunities for positive things? What are the positive things that can emerge out of disasters? If you've experienced any of that, what are the positive things? So, for example, often there's a sense of community that arises in a disaster that wasn't there previously. So any thoughts from people in the chat about what can arise? And part of this holding the container for this fertile emergence is holding the container of the emotions, going back to James's question, which is quite a deep question. So any thoughts in the chat of what might positive things that mutual aid, the building back better, more people growing their own food, motivation to work together, so the working together is it's working together and motivation for that as well. Sharing spaces. So all of these things are potential to come through in those times of disaster, and it's how do we hold the container for those to be more likely to come through. So that's also something to recognize about cultural emergence, is that it is a process that is happening all the time, and at certain times, like disasters, it's amplified that opportunity for change, for cultural change. And so it's also a time for really paying attention to culture, to paying attention to design, to resilience building, to connection, to supporting emotions to flow, to building trust, so that when we do those things, we have the potential for fertile emergence.
Carrying on from trauma and losing homes, how do, when people come together in a temporary community, what kind of principle and framework within cultural emergence would really help build community and empower? That's my summary. So not the whole book, just a bit.
Well, I pulled out a few of the principles that speak to me about this kind of the collective decision making and collective response. So and I'd like to go analog with paper, because we're living such in a digital world at the moment. So I've got this one here, which is use the intelligence of cooperating hearts. So we've got aim for the good of the whole, and access more of yourself, and tap into a deeper level of information. And I think this one is so critical, that we we come to these spaces with heart intelligence. So not just head intelligence, but heart intelligence. And that heart intelligence, as I was saying, it helps us to go below the surface of culture. It's the language translator for what's happening below the surface. So I think that's really helpful. And to remember always this principle, which is many minds are better than one. And I particularly like this of like honoring the beginner's mind. So we've got gain a diversity of perspectives and create solutions for everyone. But this honoring the beginner's mind is really useful for that valuing of everyone in the system, that it's not just the experts that or the elders that need to be listened to and responded to, that actually the solutions can come from any direction. And yeah, a couple more principles which I pulled out, which is this one, which is being attentive to shifts, openings and opportunities, and that really supports us in our design processes when we can actually acknowledge what the energy is that in that moment, and when there's openings for change, which can come through disasters, and we can also create openings as well. And that it's observation that is really key part of that. And this is one of my favorite of the cultural emergence principles, which is allowing for the possibility of the seemingly impossible, and to really impart that principle as well with whoever we're working with, so that there is this opportunity for them to vision, to dream, to hope as well. I think that was someone said that in the opening round, that this there is Reliance group, it encourages hope with the people that we're working with. So those are some of the principles that I think are really useful for bringing into our collective decision making, and to really invite that collective decision making within our work. I think I'll leave it as those principles at the moment, Maddie, but yeah, there is more to the Cultural Emergence toolkit with design, and a whole design framework there that can really support us in small designs as well as big designs as well, so that we can also engage people on a design level. So so the design, with design we can use, Chris just said, more examples of design. So we can use the design framework if we're trying to run courses or workshops, if we're trying to create a women's health program, or women's empowerment, or it helps us, if we're trying to encourage people to learn new skills, or to improve their well-being, and it helps the design web, which is part of the design framework that I created with people in permaculture, that then so here's the design web there that then I've expanded upon in Cultural Emergence, and it helps us to see patterns and reflect on it and create action plans, and to really work out what are the needs, so that we're coming with solutions that actually meet the needs, rather than assuming what the needs are and coming with a solution that then doesn't meet the needs.
Listening to the people who are actually making the design. And it is exactly that. It's about getting the part, encouraging and facilitating full participation and ownership of the decision making and the design. And that's why it's so positive, because you know, we go away and we find, you know, I mean, I've used it with a group, a charity that ran an educational project, and they went away with, in a day, with a whole new design about where that project would go, because it's easy to grasp and also implement.
And it helps us to focus on what the limits really are, so we don't just ignore the limits, we actually explore
and talk
them
about the uncomfortable things as well.
Back to the first principle that I shared at the beginning, which is about tending to your own personal culture and recognizing what the cultures are that we're a part of, those that we're bringing to the situation, and to be paying attention to them, and to recognize that there's more than one way of doing things, and that we can consciously uncondition ourselves as well. We can work with our own cultural conditioning that can support us to be more present in the moment. So yeah, well, we are at 5 o'clock, so thank you to everyone for coming. I'm just going to put my website in the chat. There's the Cultural Emergence website, if anyone would like to find out more about Cultural Emergence, and James put a link into my taster course as well if you want to discover more. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, thanks.